Welcome, everybody, to another edition of A Conversation With here on the SevereMMA YouTube page. I am Spencer Kite, your friendly neighborhood Spencer man. That feels fitting to say and drop today, with my guest being a reporter and social media man for MMA Fighting, a collector of comic books, a watcher of anime. He is tattooed. He is stylish. He is rocking lilac hair. He is Jose Youngs. Thank you for doing this, man. I appreciate it.
Anytime, man. You got all of my actual titles correct, so kudos to you.
Listen, it's pretty easy. It's on your Twitter bio. I just pulled up the Twitter, but sometimes that little bit of research doesn't even get done. So we'll do it that way. This show starts the same every week. Jose Youngs, when did you fall in love with combat sports?
Well, as people might know from my first name, or if they followed me, I'm pretty brown. So anytime you grow up in a Mexican household, it's kind of boxing is king. Boxing and professional wrestling was obviously a big part of my. I don't want to say it was a massive part of my childhood because I like comic books and baseball were like my two biggest passions. But growing up with two brothers and predominantly like most of my cousins were around the same age as me, and they were almost all of them were male. Pro wrestling and boxing that's all we kind of did and talked about growing up. And then when you discover that they're kind of blending the two with Pride back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, that's what I fell in love with first. I fell in love with Pride before the UFC. And then off of that, I discovered everything else. And I still love boxing and I still love pro wrestling. Pride just blended the two and I loved it. And I loved all the characters and I grew to love the sport. So that's that. I don't have an exact moment in time or exact fight, but I just remember. Oh, well, I mean, I also grew up down the street from a VHS, like a video store. So I would just rent all of like the Pride and the Bushido tapes.
You had a quality video store that had the Pride and the Bushido tapes, whereas us Canadians, we had just UFC. And so
yeah, well, this is what happens when you don't have the monarchy of England as your monarchy as well. We get the fun tapes.
This is probably it. Or you live in a cool city in Rhode Island that just has good stuff.
Represent. It was attached to a comic book store too, oddly enough.
Nice. Look at that. You mentioned having siblings and lots of male cousins. Was there at home Pride rules, at home WWE taking place? Or was it just, we watch this, we talk about it, but nobody's swinging on anybody?
It was mostly wrestling because we had a trampoline outside because like me and my brothers, I'm the oldest of three. And then Miguel is 3 years younger than me and Pablo's 4 years younger than me. And then on like the other side, like my cousins, Alfonso, Manuel, Alejandro, Victor, were all like within the same age bracket, Carlos too. So we would all just jump on the trampoline and just do, backyard wrestling or, off the bunk beds or off the stuff. So it was not a lot of MMA. It was mostly like choke slams and Boston crabs and figure four locks and all that kind of stuff.
Getting your Hardy brothers on. That's 100%. How they started, right? Omega 100%. Back in their backyard with trampolines and all of that stuff. All right. So that's how you fell in love with combat sports. Let's shift to maybe the first love, comic books. What was the first comic book that you read?
The first comic book
first one that was just like, hang on a minute, I'm in.
So the first I didn't pick up a comic. Like I loved superheroes before I picked up comic books because my uncle David gave me. It's actually the sitting somewhere over here. I have a huge binder of superhero trading cards, and I couldn't even read when he gave this to me. I was maybe 3, maybe 4. Like if I could read, it was like very rudimentary. And they had like 150 superheroes and 100 villains, and then they had teams and then events and like various other like important figures and moments in Marvel history. So I would literally just pull out a card and just give it to my uncle and be like, tell me about this person. And then he would tell me about like Jean Grey or Sleepwalker, Ghost Rider, Captain America, all this kind of stuff. And then I got the Batman ones and I got the DC ones. I got the Gen 13 ones, the Wildstorm ones. So I just collected all of these cards. Like I say I collected them. He gave them to me before I could even read. The first comic book that I read solo by myself was the comic book adaptation of Batman Mask of the Phantasm, which is the first movie from Batman the Animated Series, the Paul Dini led like TV show, which to this day I think is one of the 5 greatest TV shows ever, and without a doubt kind of lit the fuse for this boom that we know now of like Batman and everything. I think a lot of it comes from the Paul Dini and like that world. Like obviously everyone knows Mark Hamill was the Joker, and that's to this day that he's the best Joker, live action or voice acting. But the movie is to the best Batman movie ever. I think it's Mask of the Phantasm, The Dark Knight, and the most recent Robert Pattinson, The Batman, are a close second. And then, of course, they did Batman Sub-Zero, which was also Batman the animated series, but that was Mr. Freeze, of course, and Batgirl and all that kind of stuff. But the comic book adaptation, Mask of the Phantasm, is the first comic book I ever read by myself. The first comic book I ever bought by myself was it was an adaptation of Batman the animated series. It was the issue with Scarecrow where Batman thinks he's in Arkham Asylum, but he's actually not. It's like just Scarecrow messing with his head. So those were the 2 big ones that I vividly remember reading as a kid.
What was it about Batman? Was it sort of through the cards? Was it through the shows? Or was it just there's always something about Batman that just stuck for you?
Well, I love Batman. He's not my all-time favorite.
We'll get into that.
Yeah, at his best, Batman can be the best written character, but at his worst, he's very much one of the worst. I just think growing when I was a little kid, I loved Marvel. I still love Marvel, and I love all of the superheroes. But I think it was just the fact that I couldn't read yet. But I could watch Batman the animated series when it was happening, so I didn't need. I could still absorb all of the characters and the heroes and the lore of Batman, and that show is a fantastic primer for Batman. If anyone's like trying to get in, like, because reading comic books is a daunting task because Batman just celebrated its 75th anniversary, so people are like, "Oh, I have 75 years to catch up." Batman the Animated Series is a great primer, and I just think I remember it was really the first superhero I could just absorb on my own because my uncle didn't live in Rhode Island, so I could only really get comic book knowledge from him when he was in town. But I could watch Batman the Animated Series, and then from there I watched Superman Adventures, the 1992 X-Men, the early 90s Spider-Man, the early 90s Iron Man, the early 90s Fantastic Four. But like I watched Batman, so when I went to the comic book store, I didn't really need prior knowledge, if that makes sense. I could just pick up a Batman comic book and be like, oh, that's Bruce Wayne, that's Dick Grayson, that's Pamela Ivy, that's Victor Freeze. Like I just knew the characters from the TV show, so that's what gravitated to me first.
Yeah, these are people I can identify with. I don't have to figure out all the background lore and everything. So you mentioned Batman isn't your favorite. We'll just go there now. Who is?
He's up there. Batman is up there. If he might be my favorite, he might be my favorite DC hero. I go back and forth. My all-time favorite superhero is Ghost Rider. And he's not even remotely the best written character whatsoever. Like he has bad comic books. When I was 11 or 12, I got the action figures. I would collect the action figures of superheroes, and each superhero would come with a comic book. And I bought the Ghost Rider one solely because I needed it for the collection. And then I read the issue it came with, and I'm like, well, it was, I think Mark Teixeira, I think was the, not to be confused with the first baseman for the New York Yankees. It's a different guy. His art was just fantastic at the time. I can't remember who wrote it, but his art popped. And it was when Ghost Rider was fighting this villain called Blackout. And it was just the lore behind Ghost Rider was very interesting because also at the time, I like characters where they don't know their own backstory. So like for decades, we didn't know Wolverine's origin story. For decades, we didn't know Gambit's origin story. Like I enjoy finding out as the character finds out. So Ghost Rider, Dan Ketch's Ghost Riders, the second iteration, well, technically third iteration of the Ghost Rider, but second with the Flaming Skull, him turning into Ghost Rider, but not really knowing why or who he is or what this demon inside of him is, was very fascinating to me. And then from there, I bought every single Ghost Rider that has ever been printed on paper I own. From the original 70s one through the 90s to the mid 2000s to the relaunching most recently. If there's a team up of Ghost Rider, I bought it. A lot of it is very bad. A lot of it I shake my head at, but when he's on, he's on. So it's between Ghost Rider. I really like Daredevil. I really like Batman, and I love Spider-Man. I think Spider-Man has been the most consistent in my life because like I've gotten burnt out from Batman, I've gotten burnt out from
Right.
Daredevil, and I've gotten burnt out from Ghost Rider. But I feel like Spider-Man is my comfort food. Like when I'm
Yeah.
on a when I'm on a
Yeah.
plane and there's good Wi-Fi with my iPad, I'll literally just read Spider-Man to pass it. Like issues I've read 1,000 times. Spider-Man
I
is more
gotcha.
of like I'm just gonna pass the time and read this because whether it's good or bad, I'll at least have fun.
Right. Okay. So how do we feel about first the Ghost Rider movies, and then also just the movies in general? Because you said like if you're on the plane, you'll flip through books.
Mm-hmm.
Are you primarily like exclusively comics themselves? Do you let yourself branch into the film side of things, or is it like they don't do them justice? I'm sticking with the comic books.
To answer the first part, the Ghost Rider comic books or the Ghost Rider movies are bad. I
Yes.
skipped school both times they came out to go watch them, or the first one because the second one I was in college. The second one I went to go see with a lady, and I was like, I am so sorry, this was so bad. But there are moments in each that I think do it justice. The Blackheart villain from the first movie was horrendous because it was just this doofy little emo guy in a trench coat. And if anyone knows who Blackheart is in the comic book, he's like a 6'9", just demon with no mouth, red eyes, and just like dreads to the floor and like pointed hooves and a tail. There would have been better if it was that, obviously. Mephisto, same thing, just this doofy guy in a trench coat rather than this giant like demonic monster. They get some moments right. Like when it's not Nicolas Cage and it's Ghost Rider,
Right.
I
Yeah.
think it's very good. Like the second one, they made the villain Blackout, not Blackheart, Blackout, but they didn't really give him the right powers. They just didn't give him the right powers. But when Nicolas Cage turns into Ghost Rider and it's Ghost Rider getting into shenanigans, I had a good time because I'm like, this is just the Ghost Rider comic books. But then when
Right.
Nicolas
It's
Cage is doing
just
this thing,
right.
it's silly. So still holding out. The TV show when they had the fourth iteration of Ghost Rider with the muscle
he was
car,
on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
it's fine. That's not my personal favorite iteration of Ghost Rider because there's been multiple ones. Like there's the Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider with Zeratos. There's the Dan Ketch Ghost Rider with Noble Kale, and then there's the Ghost Rider with the muscle cars. They even kind of branched out to like Ghost Rider on like ancient African times and cavemen times and everything. Like I get it. It's all fun, but like my favorite is Dan Ketch, and they haven't done that yet. So I'm just waiting for that. They skipped him over to do the muscle cars. But in terms of the movies, I have nothing against the movies whatsoever. I just don't really watch most of them. I hope people enjoy them, and I hope it leads people to discover the comic books. My issue with the movies is whatever's coming out in the movies seems to be what they push in the comic books. And to the extent where like they'll push other characters aside to push merch, and that bothers me. Yeah, okay. and I understand like when Black Panther comes out, you're going to want to capitalize on the Black Panther name, but not at the expense of other characters. So like when Black Adam came out, all of a sudden Black Adam is everywhere in the comic books. I'm like, I enjoy Black Adam when Black Adam is a supervillain, not an anti-hero. I enjoy the supervillain Black Adam, and I don't need him I don't need him fighting Batman and Wonder Woman. I need Black Adam fighting Shazam. But if it means more people are discovering comic books, right, I don't fault them. People that complain that the movies aren't doing the comic books justice, like I get it, because at one point in my life I was like that, but it's just it's just different.
Right. It's just a different medium. It's just a different realm.
And you can't, and they don't like when they did
it's impossible to be truly accurate, faithful to it. Yeah.
Also, not for nothing, like a lot of these comic books are written in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and just society as a whole has changed. Right. Like there was no cell phones when Spider-Man was in high school, like stuff like that. There was no internet. Right. There was no social media. Like there was no like we were still like when Superman was created, like we couldn't even go into space yet. Like people hadn't walked the moon. Like there was World War II was happening when Superman came out. It's just a different time of the world. there are some decisions I wish they had waited to do. Like the Infinity Gauntlet movie, I get is like the big one that everyone wanted because Thanos is such a popular 90s villain. And Thanos is a very fascinating character. You can't do, they didn't use Adam Warlock or Silver Surfer because of the Silver Surfer was owned by Fox and the Fantastic Four IP. But doing the Infinity Gauntlet without Silver Surfer is like doing Harry Potter without being able to use Harry Potter. It was a bummer not seeing.
We're missing pieces.
We're missing, not just missing pieces, but missing like integral pieces. And I think the movies did a very good job at working around that. Like they replaced certain, like, because in the comic books, like Thor and Iron Man are very involved in Guardians of the Galaxy. But obviously they were not in the movies, which I think they did it was just fine. It was just fine.
Gotcha.
Same as like they can't use Mr. Fantastic or Invisible Girl or Human Torch or all these other things. But yeah, the movies are fine. They're just not for me. Some of them I will see. Some of them I do see because I am very emotionally connected to the character. Like I've seen the Doctor Strange movies because I love Doctor Strange. And I love the Midnight Suns, which is like Ghost Rider, Vengeance, Johnny Blaze, Doctor Strange, Morbius. Like I saw Morbius, that was bad. So if there's characters that I feel emotionally attached to, and I don't want to say I'm like I'm not the guy, I'm not the know-it-all be-all of like these characters. I probably am a Ghost Rider, so I'll see anything that has Ghost Rider in it. But there are some characters that I've read so much of in my life that I just feel like an obligation to see.
I got you.
I haven't seen like Hawkeye. I haven't seen any of the Hawkeye show. I saw Moon Knight because I was doing the podcast with Robbie, but like I've seen almost none of the shows. I've seen none of the Thor movies. I've seen none of the Captain America movies. I saw Iron Man 1 and 2. I saw Spider-Man. I saw the first Spider-Man, and I saw the most recent one when like the multiverse like collapsed on itself because that was just a fun time. And I've seen Into the Spider-Verse because I love that comic book. But like I am willing to bet I've seen maybe a quarter of the MCU movies out there, which is fine, and I hope people enjoy them.
It's not the answer I expect. It's actually the answer I expected, but I appreciate the depth to the answer. Like I didn't think you were going to be the guy that was on here doing the like F those movies, screw everybody that likes them. Like your stance of, hey, if people like them, great, is what we need.
And representation matters. Black Panther being a superhero movie is incredibly important to a very specific demographic.
Yes.
Since like Shang-Chi is such a nothing burger to me in the comic books. Like I have no attachment one way or another. But when they announced the movie, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Unfortunately, Marvel does a very bad job at making Hispanic superheroes, but we're getting that with the Blue Beetle. So there's been 2 iterations of the Blue Beetle. The first Blue Beetle was just more like a Batman type character. Like he dressed up, he knew martial arts, he had like the Beetle car and he had a cave and everything. There's a new one is very Mexican, Puerto Rican, whatever. So we get some of that. But Marvel has yet to tap that. Maybe they can do it with if they ever do White Panther, but who knows?
I think there's been talk, if I'm not mistaken, that it's going to either be a show or a movie with the kid from Cobra Kai, if I'm not mistaken.
For what, Blue Beetle?
For Blue Beetle.
Yeah, it's already like the posters and stuff are out.
Yeah,
it looks great.
It's in the works.
Oh, I'm not even that big of a Blue Beetle fan, but because he's a teenager and like teenage superheroes, like it's hard to write because people are adults trying to write
grown men
dialogue.
Are writing teenagers. Yeah.
And so when it's great, it's great. Like I love superheroes in high school. Like Peter Parker's life. Peter Parker as a superhero while juggling high school is my favorite era of Spider-Man. Same as like when the X-Men are in school.
I think you posted something very recently that Spider-Man freshman year is coming out, and you were like, "I can't."
Oh yeah, I'm very excited for that. Like the Ultimate Spider-Man, which I don't know if you remember or people that watch the show, but Ultimate Spider-Man launched in 2001, and that was like right around the time of the first Spider-Man movie came out, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans, which are the second one is fantastic. The first one's important, the second one's great. Third one is just a silly goose time. Once Ultimate Spider-Man and the Ultimate Universe came out, so it wasn't a relaunching, it was its own universe, where everything in the Marvel universe was updated to like present day. So when Peter Parker was in high school, there were cell phones and the internet and electric cars, and it was like Peter Parker in 2001. Like it was
Right.
basically relaunching Spider-Man in present day.
Present day.
The X-Men started great. The Avengers were called the Ultimates. The first 13 issues were great. The Ultimate Spider-Man run, I think it's like, I don't even know, 100 something issues. Issues 1 to end are perfect. It is the perfect Spider-Man story. So I get DMs all the time. What Spider-Man should I read? Pick up Ultimate Spider-Man 1 and read the entire thing, and you will love it. It is the best Spider-Man run ever.
Okay. What are the most misunderstood, wrong opinions about comic books and comic book readers that continue to frustrate you to this day? Because I do know, both in doing my research, being friends with you a little bit, I know there was a thing you posted. I think you reposted it fairly recently
reposted a lot.
about look, if you've ever had that moment where someone's giving you shit for reading comic books and you feel ostracized and you feel alone, let me tell you, you are not, which I think is a powerful thing to always put out there for comic book readers or people of any group that feels ostracized, anybody in general. But it is certainly a stereotype and a thing that we hear over and over, right? The joke. It's why the name of Robbie's show is so great, My Mom's Basement, because it's just like, here, let me steer right into this. Come on down. Let's hang out. But what are those misconceptions and wrong opinions that persist that are just so messed up?
The big one obviously is that comic books are for kids, or they're juvenile, or like you're a grown man reading comic books. Like what's wrong with you? Like, if you read, and this isn't just about comic books, this is anything in life. I think there is a kind of unspoken like mutual understanding between people that are quote unquote nerds or geeks in any fandom, where if I don't play video games. Not that I dislike them, just I didn't have video games growing up, so it's just not on my peripherals. I appreciate the artistic thing of video games very much. It's not my go-to. If I, as a comic book fan, kind of see another like a video game fan, and like they love video games as much as me, and we kind of know that there is a mutual understanding of like we've been through the same thing and we appreciate the others. It's same as like when if you're a Star Wars, like I love Star Wars. I don't really watch Doctor Who, but like if I see a Doctor Who fan, there is some unspoken bond between nerd like fandoms.
There's a we get each other fandom to it. Yeah.
Correct. And I think it's a big, like the movies, if there's one thing I say about the MCU that's great, is it's really kind of broken that stereotype that we're like being an anime too. Like there's so like Michael B. Jordan is a massive weeb. Like Israel Adesanya is a massive weeb. Like there are very famous people now that don't feel like they need to hide it. Like forever, the big one was like Nicolas Cage was kind of like and Kevin Smith were the two big comic book fans of the world, which is fine. Like Kevin Smith, I disagree with a lot of what he says about comic books, but he held the flag low. Patton Oswalt, I think, is the perfect representation. Like that dude is understanding about everything. He appreciates everything. And I think if there should be a face of this comic book world, it should be him. He's just a great human being all around and really gets it. But the big thing is just that comic books are for kids. Now there's this big thing, like the big thing now started in 1986 is when Dark Knight Returns and The Watchmen and Mouse all came out in the same year. That kind of shifted the narrative what comic books could be, because Dark Knight Returns is obviously a more mature adult Batman, like he kills the Joker. It's like grungy, dark noir, and it's good. It's very good. It is very important. I think I don't subscribe to the notion that it's the best Batman comic book ever. But if you told me right now that it's the most important Batman comic book ever, I would not argue. I would disagree, but I would not argue. The Watchmen, same thing. If you told me that Watchmen is the greatest, most important comic book ever, I would not argue. The argument is sound. It is rock solid.
Right.
I would disagree.
Make your case. Fine. We can have a debate, but your points stand.
Mouse, but that same year, Mouse won a Pulitzer Prize. It's still the only comic book that's won a Pulitzer Prize. And it has nothing to do with superheroes. It is about the Holocaust. and it's a comic book. It's a graphic novel. There's 2 volumes of it sitting behind me. It's top 10 books I've ever read, not comic books or not. So comic books and I'm using the phrase comic books because Marjorie Satrapi, who wrote Persepolis, who I think is one of the greatest female writers in comic book history, that was her autobiography, like her memoir, but as a comic book. And she's like, they're comic books. Like this whole graphic novel versus comic book versus visual art, they're comic books. That's the notion I subscribe to. Like if you've read Persepolis or Mouse, like, or anything like that, it will awaken you into what comic books could be. Because the greatest comic book if I make a list of the 5 greatest comic books I've ever read, the 10 greatest comic books I've ever read, I bet maybe 2, at most 2, are superhero related. So there are, like, comic books are a work of art. They're very hard to do. And I think there is an issue in comic books in the last 10 years of people trying to up them. Like they see what works and they're trying to up it. Like they're trying to top it. Like, do you know who Darwin Cook is? He wrote The New Frontier. He did a lot of The Spirit. New Frontier is his big one. He did Parker, like he made the detective comic books Parker. He since passed away, and it was a massive loss to the comic book industry. He had this theory that he's taught a lot, that you should be able to give a comic book to anyone from the ages of whatever, like 3 to 90, like, and they should be able to get something out of it.
And they can enjoy it. Yeah.
They can enjoy it. I understand there are comic books I would never give a 5-year-old that I love, but I think that is at like 90% of the time, you should be able to do that. You should be able to give a comic book to anyone and they should be able to enjoy it. Now, I will never give a 5-year-old like The Watchmen.
Right.
But it's still, like, Alan Moore is, like, I think the greatest comic book writer of all time. But I think they're like I don't like The Boys at all. I'm sure you've seen my tweets about it. I think it's just hot garbage.
I haven't watched a minute.
The problem with The Boys is like the stuff, like, I haven't seen the show, and I understand the show is different because I've had this debate with people. Like the comic book is the things that they do in the show is awful. So like women to men to like people of certain sexual identities, like it's awful what they do. And obviously they don't do a lot of that in the show, but when people, like I said, if you watch the movies and then you go seek out the material, they'll see like, oh, the Boys is selling a lot. Let's make more. And then the person that made The Boys made this comic book called Crossed, which is the worst thing I've ever read. I can't even tell you what's in it on air. Like it is bottom of the barrel material. It's awful. And because they go, oh, The Boys is doing good, let's up it.
Let's do.
That's my big thing right now, is like, stop trying to up and just put out quality content. Just put out quality content. That's all. That's my big issue with comic books right now, is people trying to constantly, just a bunch of edgelords trying to out edge the other one.
I mean, it fits as a bit of a segue, because I think in terms of content in general, that seems to be what we're always chasing. Everybody's always chasing, oh, I've got to be ahead of this guy, and I've got to outscoop, or I've got to outproduce, and it's got to be this, that. As you said, if it's quality content, just keep pumping out quality content. You want to be a 300 hitter that's knocking doubles every day. Let's go. Just give me good hits all the time.
Or just like, I'm not a big Mark Millar guy. I understand why people enjoy him. Like, there is some content that Mark Millar puts out that I enjoy, but not because I enjoy the material, but because it's unique. And then after a while, your uniqueness stops becoming unique because everyone is doing it, and you're just kind of replicate what has gotten you to the dance. You're not trying to evolve. Now, there are comic books that people have put out that I've not enjoyed, not because they were bad, they're just boring. But I have greatly appreciated them trying something new, and I respect that. But like, at the same time, the greatest comic book I have ever read in my entire life is Berlin by Jason Lutz, which is about post World War I Berlin, Germany. It to me has set the standard of what comic books could be. It's that my for like every few years, my answer changes. I read it. So he started it in the 90s, and it took him 22 years to finish because he put one issue out a year for 22 years because of the amount of research he did, because he also drew it.
Right.
And then when it was done and he put the big bound, when it's sitting like somewhere over here,
It's somewhere on
right
that
there.
shelf.
Yeah. It's the best thing I've ever read in any avenue, in any magazine, book, comic book, article. It's the best thing I've ever read because I can't recommend it enough. Before that, my favorite comic book was Duncan the Wonder Dog, which is about talking animals in society, because it was so unique. Was it the best? Probably not, but it was so unique.
Right.
And it was so refreshing. And I remember sitting down and reading it, and I read the entire book in one sitting because it was so weird. And I had so much fun. And I just remember finishing it and be like, that was such a joy to read. That was such a joy. And it just reset what I thought comic books could be. So like stuff like that, just, I love it. Just people thinking outside the box is what I love.
I gotcha. So we've covered some comic books here. Let's circle back to where people know you from most of all, which is MMA.
Yeah.
But for me, it always, I want to start it before that. Was journalism always the idea for you? When did you get bitten by the bug? Because you're another one of these ASU grads that I'm surrounded by. You remember this Cronkite crew of people that I know now. So prominent journalism school, very good journalism school. You may say the best. I'm not going to get into that. I'm Canadian. I have no skin in this game. But when did the bug bite you? What led you down this path to where you are now?
Well, my ultimate goal was never to be a journalist. It's still not even to be a journalist. My ultimate goal is to own and operate a bookstore. That is my ultimate end goal in life. This is just something that I'm very good at.
A means to an end.
I do love journalism and I do love sports, but it's not my end goal at the moment. I grew up not watching a lot of TV or playing video games, but I was obsessed with reading the sports page of the newspaper. That, like, I would wake up first to get the newspaper to read whatever, like all the local stuff. Obviously,
so in
baseball.
Rhode Island, who are you reading? What are you reading?
I don't even know who's there anymore. Growing up, Sean McAdams was God. Growing up, I was reading the Providence Journal. Sean McAdams. I think now he's either at the Boston Globe or the Boston Journal or Herald or whatever it is. He went on to much bigger and better things. Like Sean McAdams is kind of the guy in New England. But he worked at the Providence Journal and he was the man. He was Red Sox guy, because Red Sox in sports, my night and day ends with the Red Sox. It's kind of why I don't work in baseball, because I didn't want to make that a job, because I love it so much.
Okay.
But I would wake up every day, whether it was basketball, baseball, football, and just read like the box scores, the recaps, who's first, who's in first, who got hits, how many home runs. The home run chase was a big deal for me in 1998. The Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa thing, that was huge for me. That's how I kind of fell in love with journalism, because I didn't watch TV when I was 7 or 8.
So you had to consume it through the people telling you the story.
I would wake up and just go, did he hit another home run? And then just like read the newspaper. So writing was my first passion. And then when you go to the Cronkite School, and you bring up the Cronkite School, I was the first class to graduate from the Cronkite School. Like this downtown one. I was the first one. So I went to school to write, but then at the Cronkite School, they make you learn everything. They make you learn how to write, shoot video, edit video, write on the internet. So obviously MMA, we don't really get a lot of newspaper time. So when I got an MMA job, it was really like, let's just make you a reporter for the internet. So I said, let's do it. If that means I can cover MMA, I'm gung ho.
Okay. So what led you to that point of, this is what I'm going to do? It was just consuming so much sports, consuming the newspaper, consuming those kinds of things that you were like, listen, I can make a career watching and reading and writing about sports. Let's go.
That's pretty much it. I just wanted to get paid I wanted to get paid to watch sports, and I wanted to get paid to write about sports, because that is what everyone wants to get paid for what they're good at or what their passions are,
what they enjoy.
That's pretty much what it went down to. And then I remember reading ESPN, the magazine, like the not Sports Illustrated, like the big goofy ESPN, the magazine. the one that was just like comically big. And there was an article that was like, if you want to get a job in sports, you got like, here's a roadmap. And it was like, if you want to be an agent, go to this school. If you want to be like a sports physician, go to this school. And one of them goes, if you want to be a sports reporter, go to the Cronkite School. And I was like, okay, that's literally it. It wasn't like this. I didn't do any research. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go to the Cronkite School. I want to leave Rhode Island. Let's go here. I applied to one school and I got into one school, and that's the one school I went to. So that was
graduated from one school and put a QR code on the top of your
did, baby.
cap. Did anybody reach out through the Hire Me QR code on the top of your cap?
No, no one ever did, but I got a lot of texts about it, and people on my LinkedIn would be like, I found you because of your photo. I'd be like, well, at least you found me. Like at the time, I really wanted to work at obviously Fighting or Junkie or at Sure Dog at the time, or just, work for UFC or Bellator or Strike Force, whoever. I wanted to work in the sport. And then I just worked my way up from writing for various blogs to now working at what I think is the best independent site. Obviously, it's hard to compete with ESPN because they are the broadcast partner. That's correct. No knock on ESPN. I love all the people that work at ESPN, but it's like it's hard when they're the guys. But I think fighting's the best. People might disagree, but I also might be, I work there. I might be clouded.
We don't need to necessarily get into any of those debates as we're sitting here on SevereMMA, which happens to be pretty damn good at
hey man, I like Sean. I have all my friends work at MMA Junkie too. I got a lot of like Ant Walker over at Sure Dog, Jay over at Sure Dog. I have a lot of love for a lot of guys in this industry.
Save for maybe Mark Ramundi. We'll throw some shade at Mark.
You said it, not me.
Just to throw shade at Mark. Hi, Mark. We'll have to have you on the show at some point. What was it about MMA as the journalism path? You said you didn't want to do baseball because you didn't want to basically spoil baseball. You wanted to be able to keep baseball as this is my thing. When did you decide MMA is the path? Like, so was it just that like we'll combine the two things that I liked? Okay, we got
this is a very fun. This is a very
stories.
This is not an exciting story. I think it's a very funny story.
All right,
because of how boring it is. Like I think it's funny because I'm like, that's it. I'm like, that's why it's funny. So I was working at ArizonaSports.com, and they were Arizona Sports 6:20 a.m. I was an internship at school, and they do the Cardinals, the Suns, the D-backs. They just do all the local sports. And I was covering, and then at one point in the middle of my internship, they switched from 6:20 a.m. to 98.7 FM, and they did a full rebrand, like new color palette, new website, new everything. And they wanted to expand. So at the time, I was covering the Reno Aces, which is the AAA team for the Diamondbacks, and the Phoenix Mercury, and the Arizona Coyotes. At the time, the Phoenix Coyotes. So those were three. Because I was an intern, no one really wanted to cover the Coyotes or the Reno Aces. Oddly enough, the Reno Aces won the championship that year. They had young Trevor Bauer as their ace pitcher and Adam Eaton as their star center fielder. So I had fully accepted the fact that I would just be a reporter for whatever they needed. Like there were people that worked at Arizona Sports that's like, we need someone to go cover the Suns practice. Yeah, all right, who's online? You go. Like you just get assigned every day.
Right. They just send you out that
just send you out. Like what's go find an angle. Like I had fully accepted that I would just be an Arizona Sports guy. And then when they switched, obviously Arizona is a hotbed for MMA. At the time, we had Power MMA. AZ Combat Sports still doing its thing. We had the Lab. We had Fight Ready. We had all these gyms, and they wanted to make an MMA section for Arizona MMA. And Ryan Bader, Aaron Simpson started a radio show at Arizona Sports called the Power MMA Show because they own and operated the Power MMA gym.
Right.
And the head of editorial walks over to like the little area where the interns are, and they're like, who here likes MMA? And I was like, I like MMA. And they're like, all right, you're the guy. And that was it. That's the story. I raised my hand.
Nice.
And then I worked at the radio show.
This was a decade ago.
This was 2013. This is 2013. Okay. 2012 maybe. So I literally just started. but then as you know, like Canada might be different because Canada is its own country, but like it's hard to just cover Arizona MMA
Yes.
without going like around, because a lot of fighters have to go to California or Vegas, or like, oh, there's an Arizona fighter fighting in Bangor, Maine. Like Frankie Saenz and Ryan Bader fought in Bangor, Maine. Like if I have to cover Arizona MMA, I got to go to Bangor, Maine. And while you cover all of these events, you kind of you covered the other non-Arizona fighters too. So then I got a job at where you and I met at Fansided. Oh no, let me backtrack. I got a job at the MMA Corner, which no longer exists. Josh Davis gave me a shot. All kudos to him. And he was just like, Jose, do whatever you want. So I was like the guy for like 2-3 years. And then I went to Fanside where I met you. Mike Dice hired me. And then from there, I just grinded my ass off and then eventually got a job at MMA Fighting. That's literally it. It's not, I raised my hands one day at an intern story.
I like that story. Listen, everybody's entry story is different. I literally reached out. I just started a blog and happened to, it was the early days of Bleacher Report when you could use it as a syndication hub. And so I just wrote on my blog and threw everything there. And somehow Jeremy Botter was like, you know, you're not bad. And I was like, cool, I'm not bad. And he was like, do you want a job at this place? And I was like, sure. And then I called a newspaper out here and was like, hi, can I work for you for free? And they were like, yeah, you mean for free? I was like, yeah, for free. I want to write on your website. You don't cover MMA. I want to do it. And to this day, I still remember my editor, Jonathan McDonald, 3 times was like, I just want to be clear here. We're not going to pay you a dime. And I was like, fully understand this. I have a good sense that within 6 months, you're going to let me write some stuff for the paper every once in a while. Eventually, 8 years later, we had been doing a column for, you know, every Friday and stuff like that. But yeah, sometimes it's as simple as, I like MMA. I'll go. I'll do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how it is. And from there, I just like when you're young and you do something and you become good at it, because I was focusing on MMA so much that I just didn't. After a while, you look around and you're like, well, all of my connections in life are about MMA. I should probably stick with this.
Yeah.
So I can't, like, people now are like, oh, would you ever go cover baseball? I'm like, I don't know if I could, because all of my connections are MMA. Like, I know I can cover a UFC fight week in my sleep. I haven't covered baseball in 10 years.
Right.
Like press box, like locker room access. I don't know. It's passed me by. I'm sure I could figure it out. I'm sure I would love it, but
the only other thing I've ever been sent to was I did some freelance for a golf tournament in Vancouver. So the only reason it was okay is because it's still an individual thing, right? So MMA, very individual. It's just about the guy. So I'm able to go out and do the like, okay, you're this person. Let me do a little research, figure out some of the key names that are going to be here, and talk to you about the things that I've developed in my brain as a storyline for you coming into this, because it's still just, here's how this person performed. Here's where they stand. Away we go. But like, if you asked me to go cover hockey right now, like, hey, do you want to go cover the Canucks? I mean, I could go. I wouldn't do a very good job at it because I don't know.
Yeah. That's why I think I excelled in covering other sports, because we had me and then we had someone who wrote like recaps. I would find like one story about like a player. So like the last Diamondbacks game I ever covered was, do you watch baseball at all?
Yeah.
So, do you remember Ian Kennedy, the pitcher?
I do.
So Ian Kennedy won 20 games on the Diamondbacks, which at the time was a big deal. And he was going for his 20th win. And so my angle was like, I'm going to interview all of the pitchers about Ian. And I'm going to interview because Kirk Gibson was his manager who played with some of the greatest pitchers ever. I'm like, I did a whole story on Ian Kennedy without interviewing Ian Kennedy,
talking to Ian,
which I enjoyed. So I think I did well in other sports because I didn't have to do all of now I can do a recap in my sleep. Like we all can, but it's
you
finding angles is fun.
You ask if I know baseball. My first paid, and I'm using the air quotes for paid gig, writing on the internet was writing about baseball, writing about the Toronto Blue Jays for a baseball site. The first story that I wrote, let's see, just before I got married, so like 2004, 2005, somewhere in there.
Oh, so you guys were
Maybe
still stuck in
2006.
perennial. You
My
guys were
my
perennially
first
stuck in
story,
third place.
my first story was about Vernon Wells getting his gigantic contract, where we fast forward many years later, I'm sitting at a UFC event and go, you didn't want to tell me anything as the Canadian guy you've been hanging out with several events now, having drinks with. First story I ever wrote was about your brother, Matthew Wells. It all comes full circle. I left doing that because it was way too hard to get into anywhere. MMA was just this Wild West where you could write a blog and have somebody find you. So here
Baseball's
we are.
tough. Baseball's tough to get into. It's the
Baseball's
oldest
tough.
sport, so it's also an old. It's also like an old boys club. Like all the writers are still doing it. All of the writers we grew up reading are still doing it.
So there's
very few opening.
Yeah. Tell me about Rhode Island, because there are states in the United States, obviously, that I've been to, that I know things about because they are prominent or whatever. We have friends that live there, whatever the case may be. You are the only person I know from Rhode Island.
How it goes. Usually how it goes.
Tell me about Rhode Island, because I see some of the pictures on your Instagram when you post them about being back home, and it's seasonal that I love of back home in parts of Ontario. It looks wonderful, but I know nothing about Rhode Island. What are the key points of Rhode Island?
Key points of like where to go, or just in the history of time with Rhode Island?
I mean, we don't have to go like through the, like, it was settled by this, like, just what about?
I mean, we could if you wanted. It was founded by Roger Williams because he fled the Catholics and he was Protestant, and he bought land from the Indians to settle Providence because that's where it comes from. Oddly enough, Providence, when we were Rhode Island, when we were trying to become states, we had 13 colonies. Rhode Island was the first state to secede from England. So they went, when all the states followed suit, whoever was writing like the Declaration of Independence, Constitution, the founding fathers, they went to Rhode Island first, and they were like, you were the first ones to break free. Will you become our first state?
Do you want in?
Do you want to be the first state? Like, do you want to be one of one, like one of 13? And Rhode Island said, we will not sign your Declaration and Independence, Constitution, whatever, until you add the Bill of Rights. Until you do that, we're out. So then they got all 12 over the next few decade, and they needed Rhode Island. If they didn't get Rhode Island, they couldn't become a country. So they go, you're the last ones. Will you sign this thing? And they're like, hey, we told you. So this is now 1790. We told you 13 years ago, not until you add the Bill of Rights. And they're like, fine, we'll add the Bill of Rights. So they added the Bill of Rights. Rhode Island signed. They became the 13th state. So freedom of press, freedom of religion. You're welcome, everyone. That was us. But yeah, so Rhode Island is like, should be the first state. Now it's 13th state. Longest name. It's the smallest state. First town founded by a woman, Portsmouth, Rhode Island. I think it was Anne Hutchinson. Hasbro is based there. So G.I. Joe, Mr. Potato Head, Barbie, all that is from Rhode Island. Longest professional baseball game ever. Pawtucket Red Sox beat the Rochester Red Wings in 33 innings. They're a AAA team. So a lot of history in Rhode Island, but it's not a destination that people go to unless you're going to Newport, Rhode Island, which is, sailing capital of America. If the United States wins the America's Cup, the America's Cup is like the World Cup of, like, it's like the Super Bowl of sailing, and whoever wins hosts it the next year. If America wins, it's in Newport, Rhode Island. It's also where the Tennis Hall of Fame is Newport, Rhode Island. So still the smallest state, longest name, shortest motto, all that kind of stuff.
What is the motto?
Hope, Hope.
Nice. Appreciate that. We got a history lesson. I learned things.
It's also, as of this morning, I got for some reason, because I get a lot of Rhode Island press releases, it is the lowest rated roads in the country. Like, our roads are just ass. Like, they're just falling apart. Yeah.
Okay. Move on to some other stuff here. How many tattoos are we at now?
53.
53 and counting. When's the next one coming? Because I'm sure you've got it scheduled.
I don't know. I don't have any scheduled right now because I had to do a lot of work on my car. So, like, that puts a damper on spending money on things you want to spend money on.
I was going to say, is the car a thing that we normally would want to spend money on?
No.
Or the car is just a car and it needed things because you need to get around the world?
I just needed to get around. Like, I had no interest. I don't know what for the first thing about cars whatsoever. It's not something I've ever.
It's just a car. It's not like, yeah, I had to put a bunch of money into my
It's a
insert
Honda
something that
Civic
makes.
it's a Honda Civic
Okay.
that just needed service. Like that's
All
about
right.
it.
Yeah.
It's
All right.
I also it's hard to traveling with new tattoos is annoying. And I've been doing a lot of
Okay.
traveling lately
That's
for
fair.
work. I'm debating getting one in New York. So if I do get one, it'll be the Newark card in May. But honestly, I have a lot of friends in Arizona where I could go. I could the second we finish this show, I could just
You could
walk into
go
their
and
shop
get
and be
one.
like, let's get one right now. So
Right.
people go, when's the next tattoo? I said, I don't know, maybe tonight.
Right. If I feel like going and getting
Yeah.
tattooed. Okay. So when did you get the first one?
I got
How
the
old? Or like,
first,
how long
dude.
have we accumulate? How long has it taken to accumulate
How long? I'm
53?
gonna ask you, how
Because I
long do
feel
you?
like it's not that long.
Nope, it's not. It's not. I
Yeah.
got my first one
Because
on my wrist right here
I
in
feel like I remember you getting the first one.
2017. So in 5 years,
Yeah.
I got 53 tattoos. But I've always
Yeah.
loved tattoos. But at the time, like my dad said, you can't get tattoos until you're like you're 18. I said, that's fair. Like it's your house. Like I'm not gonna be one of those shithead
Right.
sons who just goes and just covers his body in tattoos. Also, I think it was a blessing in disguise because teenagers like dumb things. So I didn't like what I liked as a teenager, I would not get now. So and now that like I waited,
You don't have a
I got
giant Boston Red Sox B on
hell
your
no. I
shoulder
don't have
blade.
any. I have one sports tattoo, and that's a photo. That's the Muhammad Ali. That's the
Right.
only real sports one I have. I got one, and then I was dating this girl all throughout college and stuff who hated tattoos. And then when we split, like a month or two later, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get a tattoo." And then it real. Do you have any?
Yeah, I have a few. I have a couple.
When you get them, you realize how easy it is to get them, and they're not that difficult to sit for. You just want more.
Yeah.
You just want
Oh, yeah.
more.
The only reason I don't have more is that I don't have money. Or like
Correct.
I have money, but I have to save that money for other things like the mortgage on this home.
Correct.
And, you know, we had to buy a new car in September because some dipshit smashed into our other one. And we were like, oh, we need to get around for the next probably ever because they're going to write off our 12-year-old car, which they didn't, which I'm very happy for. But yeah,
I also
thankfully they gave it back to us.
I also love comic books and I love anime, so I just love visual things. So I've just been slowly been plastering things across my body, and I think there are a few tattoos that I have a feeling I'm the only one in the world who has certain tattoos.
I would think there's probably a bunch of those 53 that are one of one
for
tattoos.
Sure. Yeah, they're just very bizarre.
Is there one for you that's your absolute top of the list? Like if you're ranking them, I believe you worked at Ranker once.
I did.
You were ranking them. If you were ranking them, what is the number one spot?
I've been asked this a few times, and let me think. I have 3.
Okay.
I have 3 that I can't just there, and I love them all for different reasons. Now, I love all my tattoos. I don't have a single bad tattoo. The one I get asked about the most is my Akatsuki Bobby Hill, because that's so weird. That's Naruto and King of the Hill matched into one.
Yes.
It is very one of one. That's the one I get asked about the most. That's the one that gets recognized the most because there was like a point in time when it got really popular on the internet because of my artist. Shout out James Tran at Visual and More on Instagram. I love my Calvin and Hobbes because I love Calvin and Hobbes. That was my favorite comic strip growing up. That's one of the few color ones I have. And then it's like up here, but I have the Lo-Fi Girl from the YouTube stream, Lo-Fi Girl. Have you ever watched that?
No.
So it's lo-fi music is just
I'm gonna get recommendations of things that I need to check out. So this is the other thing I appreciate about this show.
Lo-fi music is very like mellow music. There's no words. It's just like beats and like ambient music. And for years it was called beats to study to study for. So you just throw it on the background and like work. It's very mellow music. And there is a constant stream that runs 24/7 that just plays lo-fi music. I think at one point it was the longest streamed thing ever on YouTube. And for a while they were using a a loop of this character from, I don't remember it's a Ghibli movie. I can't remember which one it is, but then it got copyright struck because it wasn't their image. So they commissioned an artist to create their own like mascot
caricature. Yeah.
So I have the caricature right here. And I think that's the most well done one I have.
Okay.
And people will be like, is that the lo-fi girl? I'm like, yeah, it is. And then they go, that's very bizarre. And I go, but you love it. So those are my 3 favorites.
All right. What are the keys to a good tattoo? You said it's the most well done. Obviously, we've all seen terrible tattoos. I have a very not well done one. I have a couple others that are okay. But what are the keys to good tattoos?
I subscribe to the notion that as long as you like it and there's a meaning behind it, that is a good tattoo. Now, there are tattoos that are not my style that I think could be. There's a difference between is it a good subject matter and is the application good? Does that make sense? Because like
Absolutely.
I will never tell, as long as it's not like a hate symbol or some sort of derogatory imagery.
You can get whatever you like.
I will never tell someone not to get a tattoo. If someone goes, I want to get Bigfoot dunking on Thomas Jefferson across my back, I'm like, cool, man, whatever floats your boat.
Do you?
Yeah. Like, as long as you enjoy it, that is the most important thing. But there, obviously, you got to do your research. Like, too many people will just like walk into a shop and be like, I want this. Can you do it? And like, say you want like a hyper realistic portrait of Wayne Gretzky. And then you walk into an old school traditional neo tattoo shop and they're like, well, like, yeah, we could do that.
We got somebody that can do it. Yeah.
And then you look and you're like, you haven't done a realistic portrait in 10 years. Like, you really have to do your research. There are some things like anyone can do like a black spider or line work, but there are people that do them better. So also tattoos are one of those things where, like a mattress, you shouldn't skimp on. You shouldn't be like, let's find the best deal. Like, it's on your body forever. Like, you get what you pay for.
Right. Yeah. Harry, who does the takeaways with me, is a notorious, like, searches people out, makes the long-term connection. It's planned for ages and ages and ages. A bunch of his are like, I have to fly to wherever to go and get this done over these days. You and he would certainly get into some good conversations.
It's the way to do
those elements.
And now I think I have like a circle of tattoo artists. Like, I have a friend in San Diego that if he called me right now and be like, I have an opening, can you make it? I'd be like, Spencer, I gotta go. I gotta go drive to San Diego right now.
Fair.
So stuff like that. And my friend James Tran I think he's one of the best tattoo artists in the world. And he has he's too humble, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I'm like, James, like, you're so famous. Like, I got tattooed in Singapore when I went to Singapore, and the artist was like, is that a James Tran tattoo? I'm like, yeah. And he was like,
wild.
He was floored that I had met James Tran. And I told James that. He's like, no, that's not true. I'm like, it's 100% true. And I like linked them up. He has no concept of how famous he is. Or maybe he does, but he's too humble. I'm like, you're the man, dude. And sometimes you just have to admit it.
So part of that with tattoos, just in general, but also to you specifically, self-expression, personal expression, clearly a thing you have been very comfortable with for as long as I've known you. In doing my research, seems like from the jump, for as long, as far back as your IG goes, you're rocking colors, you're rocking your own style, you're doing your own thing. Yeah, when did the Jose Youngs aesthetic, style, be me, this is me, take it or leave it, originate, come from, get to where we are rocking my mom hair?
My mom is like growing up, we were very much we were the only real Mexicans in Rhode Island for like, there's obviously more Mexicans, but like I joke that my mom is the most famous Mexican in Rhode Island because she wins all the awards. Like, she just won a Pell Award for advancing Latin art in Rhode Island because she pushes Latin American artists.
Shout out to moms.
Shout out to moms. And like, she's constantly like, if there she is very Mexican and unapologetically like will not take shit
Okay,
from like
I need
old white
an
men.
expansion on very Mexican. What give me how you define very Mexican.
It's hard to like, I can't describe it without you like meeting someone. Like there's no like,
Okay,
if she
fair
said,
enough.
if you say something, if she goes, I want to do this mural because it's like artistic and this and that, because she does a lot of mural work.
Okay,
And like if an old white man like in politics is just like, oh, that doesn't really fit with the aesthetics of like Rhode Island, like Providence, like it's old. And my mom's like, so that makes you want to do it even more, like stuff
okay,
like that.
all right,
Or like
all right.
perfect example. So we live in a house. My parents live in the same house they've always lived in, like from before I was born. And when they moved in, it was white. It was a white house. And my mom was, and all the houses in my neighborhood were white, but they were like old and wooden and built in the 1700s. And mom's like, it's kind of boring. Like, let's make it weird. And she painted it bright pink. And then my next door neighbor was like, well, I want a weird house. So then they painted it yellow, like bright yellow. So now, because we live in a historic neighborhood, now there is literally a law saying you can't paint your houses these weird colors. My mom's like, well, too late. Like it's stuff like that. Like take it or leave it. This is that.
Okay. So how did that approach of your mom pass down to yourself? Are your brothers
Both
in
of
the
my
same boat?
all
Are
of
they?
us, all of us. Like my brother Pablo is like a very talented artist. He went to the URI for art. Like he's works in an art studio. My brother Miguel, again, like same thing. Like if someone said like if something is not sort of accepted in society, like we want to do it. Like no, like oh, you want like I was like ask anyone. I hate being the hipster thing. Like I did it first. Like I was wearing pearls. I was wearing pearls for a while, like before a lot of these other individuals were. But like, if there's anything out there that like society has just determined, like, I think this is weird, like, I just want to try it. I don't know why. I can't explain it, but I just want to do it. Maybe it's because it just bothers people. I don't know. But like my brother Miguel in 5th grade like Pablo's obviously an artist and he plays the drums. And he's had like long hair my entire life. Like long blonde hair. He's like the only blonde Mexican I've ever met. Because my dad's
like
white.
natural blonde hair.
It's because my dad is Irish Italian and my mom is like fully Mexican. So when I stand next to Pablo, I look Mexican. But then Miguel is like dark, curly black hair, just the mustache. Like when I stand next to Miguel, I look white. I'm like as they say, a güero. I'm like right in the middle. So like Pablo, artist, plays the drums, long hair. Like just very much an artsy guy. Miguel, same kind of thing. When we're in 5th grade, you get the option to join the band in school. And everyone goes, oh, I want to play the drums. I want to play the saxophone. I want to play the trumpet, clarinet. And Miguel's like, what has no one played? And the teacher's like, no one's ever played the trombone. He's like, that's what I'll play. And so he chose the trombone. As cumbersome as it was to carry around, he's like, that's why he chose it, because no one else wanted it. So it's just stuff like that. All three of us have been that way.
Okay. Like from the jump, like early days. And it was like how far back are we talking? Because I'm someone that like, I appreciate the shit out of it. It is something that I wish I could steer into it as much as you do. It is.
I can't.
It is commendable to me. Like this is, I'm using this opportunity, and I mean this genuinely, and I hope you do take it.
Mm-hmm.
I think who you are, how you are, unapologetically in this sport, in these spaces, is fucking important. And so, thank you.
I appreciate you, man. I think that I have been the phrase unapologetically me, and I hate talking about myself, has gotten me in a lot of trouble at various other points in jobs throughout the years. Like, Jose, you can't say that. You can't do that. We have rules. And I understand, like, rules are rules, and I fully respect that, but I can still try to do something. And until you tell me not to do it, I'm going to keep doing it.
Right.
But like, if my boss came up to me and was like, Jose, you can't have purple hair, I'd be like, you're the boss. Like, I'm not here to rock the boat. Like, rules are rules. I can't not think of a time that I've just wanted to not to just,
Like there was never a time back in your memory of like, I just want to be normcore as can
dude,
be.
normcore is such a sick aesthetic though. It's such a sick aesthetic. Like what is like that's like what like the aesthetic that Shia LaBeouf rocked, where it's just like, I just found all these clothes at a thrift shop and I'm gonna walk down the street. I wish I could pull off normcore. That's such a fun, unique aesthetic. Like normcore and scumbro aesthetic of like
meanwhile there's like 30-year-old white dudes just roaming around that are like, this is a style, this is just
right,
this is all I'm capable of. I can't do anything more than
I think
this.
that's such a, like, normcore aesthetics is so interesting. Scumbro, which is like Pete Davidson style, where he's just like, I look like a human highlighter, is such an interesting aesthetic. I can't pull those off whatsoever. Maybe I could. I wouldn't know where to go to begin about it. But
right,
that stuff is so fun. I just think people should do what they want to do, and if you want to wear black tuxedo every day, then do you, man. That's pretty much what my avenue in life is. Like, as long as you're not harming society, as long as you're not doing anything that will negatively affect my life or the people around me, like, who cares? Who cares? Gatekeeping sucks. Gatekeeping is the worst, is so boring. Like, if you were a big like Led Zeppelin fan and then like a 10-year-old walks up and is like, oh, I like Stairway to Heaven, and you're like, you're not a real fan. That's such an obvious answer. I'm like, who cares, bro? Like, people like what they like. Like, who cares?
What's it been like getting to connect with other anime fans, other folks within this industry that like you don't pass up an opportunity to talk about anime and the things you like with the other like-minded people that are like, I've seen one thing from you that tells me you like this. Let's get together and have this conversation. It doesn't matter that it's media day. Let's do it right now.
I don't know. I think people like talking about, like, I think Joe B said it best. Like, people want to talk about what they like. And I didn't really know how to put it for a long time. And then he said it in a media day. I'm like, that is exactly what I've been trying to like sort out. Like, I don't care if there's a fighter that just loves jack-o'-lanterns. Tell me everything.
Tell me everything about jack-o'-lantern.
Everything you love about jack. If you love like designing, like if you love knitting carpets, tell me everything. Like, I literally just want to hear people talk about what they want to talk about. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's about real estate. I don't care if it's about calculus. I don't care if it's about astrology. I don't care if it's about crystals. I don't care if it's about painting walls. Just tell me what you love, and I'm all for it. Now, obviously, there are some things, like if there's a comic book fan, like I'm obviously going to gravitate towards an anime fan. Like our mutual friend Mackenzie and I are obviously like huge anime fans, to the point where we got like tattoos in Singapore from like a very reputable anime artist. But if it is now acceptable in society for grown men to like anime, and I think I always knew it was coming, but now that it's finally here, I don't feel weird bringing it up, because there are a lot of anime fans, like prominent anime fans in the world now, to the point where, have you seen Creed 3?
I haven't seen it yet.
So Creed 3,
I know he directed it. He's a huge anime fan. Like, I've
heard
from watching.
So many of the tropes in that movie.
In it.
There's so many references. There's like stuff on the walls. There's like fight scenes where it's like, this is just an anime fight, like shot for shot. And it's great. I'm glad that we get that. Like, I'm glad we finally get like the recognition, like, because anime is great. Some anime is terrible, but a lot of it is great.
You mentioned you're happy to be able to finally talk about it. Look at me. I'm not the guy that has ever had a lot of trouble being able to talk about the things that I like, being able to voice my opinion on fucking anything, because I'm a now 44-year-old white male in Canada. What was that part of life like, going back to what we talked about earlier of posting the like, don't ever feel alone, don't ever feel disconnected, isolated, where you didn't have those outlets, where there wasn't that acceptance? I mean, as you said, it is becoming accepted, mainstream, talked about in places. Like, I listen to and watch Ryan Clark, who does some MMA stuff now for
DCNRC,
ESPN,
yeah. Super Bowl champion.
DCNRC, Super Bowl champion with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He has a show called The Pivot. Himself, Fred Taylor, Channing Crowder.
Fantastic show.
They had your former running back, Jamal Williams.
Yeah, we did.
And I think he's still a Packer, Aaron Jones on. And Jamal Williams is a big anime guy. And they had the conversation about it. And so it is literally getting everywhere. But there were long times, not that long ago, where it wasn't something that was talked about. What was that like, of finding those ways to, and those places where you can feel comfortable talking about it, and then also having to go through spaces of like, shit, I can't talk about this?
There was never a time when I felt like I couldn't talk about it. I just didn't waste my time because people. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, I know, 100%.
It just
if
didn't,
you wanted
like,
to, you would, but you just kind of felt like
it would fall on deaf ears. Like, no one would. Like, I had a friend. Like, I had friends in like, one of my friends to this day, Sean Bixel. We would go to every superhero movie at the time. We'd trade comic books. We would just, it was great. And I haven't seen him in a bit, but like when we do link up, it's like we never missed a beat. It's like, oh, have you read Nightwing, this and that? Oh, like all of a sudden we're at like 11 again and we're 32.
Fall right in. Yeah.
So of course I had friends that enjoyed comic books, and all of my friends in high school, like we all played sports, but they knew like like I enjoyed comic books. So like at various points in time they would ask me, but like I would rarely bring it up. But I very clearly remember times where like there were just very rude people that just didn't get it. Or like I remember this vividly. We were playing touch football in gym class in 9th grade, and someone threw a touchdown, and he like this I don't remember what his name was. He like yelled Shazam, and I was like, oh, that's a superhero. And he was like, what? And then he said some like very homophobic things, and I was like, yeah, all right, bro, like get over yourself. Like, it's fine to like things that you like. Like, it's, so I never felt like but at the same time, I had a lot of friends that did not feel the same way as me. Like, they love, like I have friends that were like really into Pokemon in high school.
Okay.
That just stopped enjoying it because it was like, it was unacceptable.
It's like, if I keep doing this, it's going to be an uphill battle forever.
Yeah. And like, they would just give up on it. And like, but on the flip side, like I have a friend back home, Ben Corey, he's my age, and he loves Pokemon to this day and has never given it up. And I love it when he talks about it, because it's such a joy to like see people and still enjoy the things that they've always enjoyed in. And I stopped kind of following Pokemon like after the first generation, saying like I never got into Yu-Gi-Oh, but like it was fascinating to me. But I think it's the stigma of people kind of equate like hentai with anime, like anime porn with anime, and it's annoying because like they're not the same, and then it's like they see like children collecting cards, like they remember collecting Pokemon cards when they were 8 and 9. So to see like an adult do it, they can't. They subscribe to this notion. They're like, oh, you have to give up things and mature,
right?
Which is like, you can mature and find and evolve without leaving behind what you loved. Like, do you still love baseball as much as you loved when you were 6 or 7?
Right.
I'm sure you do, but it's because it's a sport. Like, we have to differentiate it from stuff we enjoy. So I don't know. I've never stopped loving what I love, and I wish more people also did. A few people are going back now that it's acceptable, which is great, but I wish they didn't have to give it up.
Yeah. You have launched to that end a podcast on MMA fighting that is literally called Everything But Fighting.
Yeah.
Where, great. Come and talk about it. As you said, Joe B has been on it a couple times, yourself, Joe, and my guy, Zach Packlub, another Cronkite guy, I believe, put together an Oscar show. What was the impetus of the show? Was it just that of, let's kind of the same as this, let's pull back the curtain and show a little bit more of these men and women that we see all the time so that we know more about them?
Well, I feel like it started with like at the old style media days when it was like, be the big room of people and you'd go up one at like and interview them in this giant room. I would talk to so many fighters about stuff like that, but just like off camera, just like we're just killing time. I'm like, I should just do this.
Right.
I should just make this a show, because fighters, like, they hate talking. Like most fighters are like, yep, I'm going to fight so-and-so and I'm going to knock them out. And it's just like rinse and repeat, but they get like animated when you talk to Jalen Turner about skateboarding, when you talk about Maurice Green about knitting, when you talk to Roxy and Serena about anime, or Matt Frivola will talk for hours about the New York Mets. Like, it's stuff like that. So that is what I enjoy. As Joe B said it best, people want to talk about what they like. So that's literally I was like, hey, that'd be fun. Like, I'll talk to anyone about anything. Might as well make it a show. Oddly enough, there's a new episode that comes out tomorrow as we're recording this. I don't know when this episode comes out, but on March 28th.
Okay, so this will come out on the 29th. Go and find it. There is a new episode out for you to enjoy.
Funny you mentioned that. An episode came out yesterday. How about that? Now people can date it.
There you go. Who is on the episode? What is the episode?
Serena De Jesus, Invicta fighter. She is an absolutely massive weeb. Massive nerd. Like, she has like a broken hand, and she was talking about she wanted to paint it to look like a Mega Man and stuff like that. And we've always had this like Twitter relationship where we would talk about like anime all the time. I was hoping Roxy would be on it, but she got busy getting married and getting on a honeymoon. So like, congratulations, doing big things that are much more important than being on a podcast. So Serena is since I launched, she was like, when are you going to do an anime show? So Serena was the first anime guest, and she knocked it out of the park. Like, when I talk about comic books or anime, I go in assuming they have a very surface level knowledge. Like, I'm not going to bring up Berlin by Jason Lutz, because that's such a niche thing. So when I went in with Serena, I was like, we're going to talk about, Naruto and Dragon Ball Z and One Piece, which we did, but she dusted off some absolutely.
She just started pulling out gems that you were like, okay, we got depth that we can go to here.
To the point where I could throw such an obscure anime, and she'd be like, oh yeah, and then this and this happened. I'm like, oh, this is great. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I disagree with, we did a list of her 10 best anime, and I disagree with it, but she had a lot of great points, and she sold me on it.
As you've said throughout, you can have your opinion. I will choose to disagree, but your opinion is fair to be yours.
Yep.
Before I let you get out of here, I know you have been doing a ton of traveling. I know there is a ton of traveling on the horizon.
Yep.
Favorite stops that you've had during this last couple of years worth of journey with the MMA fighting crew, covering events. Favorite place you hit up, whether it's city, restaurant, event, not specific to MMA event. If there was like, we went to this city and hit up this thing and it was dope that we didn't expect.
Singapore was great. I got a tattoo from my boy Keith, who we became like proper friends. Like, we still talk now. And he's coming to Arizona to guest spot because I live here. And he's going to Vegas to guest spot. The guy that James Tran that does all my tattoos, I linked them together, and like, Keith is now going to do a guest spot in San Diego.
That's cool.
Keith was the man. He showed me around Singapore. So that was great. I loved London. There's a lot of my answers are going to be tattoo based. I went to this tattoo artist, Woozy, Woozy, who was a bucket list artist for me, because he does, I love absurdist art. I love absurd art. Like, if you look at it and you're like, what? Like, I love it. He only does absurdist art tattoos. And I was like, oh, it would be such a bucket list if I got one from him. So I went to London kind of last minute, and I emailed him. I was like, hey man, I know your books are closed. He's like, you're coming from America? And I go, yeah. I go, come on in. So I got an absurdist tattoo from like near the top of my tattoo bucket list, and we became pretty tight. So London and Singapore. Perth was fun because the people in Australia are so nice. It's not like they'll see you and they'll be like, hey man, like, what brings you to town? Oh, UFC, like, that sounds fun. Like, How long are you in town? What you gonna do? Like they're so nice.
They just want to chat.
They're just chat it. They just chat. So those were the 3 international ones that I really enjoyed, and then everything else in America. Canada's fun. I haven't been to Canada since the Edmonton card. Edmonton too was the last time I was in Canada.
Yeah, I'm hearing rumors that it might be out these parts here in a couple of months. So you might be out this way in June. Might have to come up this way.
In the east side, in East Canada though.
Oh, we're going that way.
Yeah.
All right. Oh man,
them's the rumors.
I don't want to book a flight. I want to just drive in.
Well, them's the rumors. Easier. I don't think anything's official yet, but
yeah,
you know how it is.
Before I do let you go, you mentioned London. If I recall correctly, you got some grief for a Nando's order.
Bro, I still get grief for my Nando's order because Molly McCann decided to throw me under the bus in the middle of media day, and then the official Twitter account of Nando's started chirping at me too.
So like they were making memes. What was the order again?
So I had never been to Nando's. I had never been to Nando's in my entire life. Like all I heard about was like Nando's. I'm like, well, I gotta go. And since then it's been fantastic. But like because I was doing a lot of walking that day, so I didn't want to like load up on like fries and bread. I didn't want to just carb load. So I got the grilled chicken with a peri-peri sauce, broccoli because I wanted like some sort of greens, and then
sort of nutrient.
And then some chips. And then people saw I ordered broccoli and just went ballistic. They're like, you got veg at Nando's? I'm like, what's the problem? And then Molly completely threw me under the bus. Like, it's all love because then after, like, we were kind of laughing about it. And then she told me, we sat down and she told me what to order. And I went back and I ordered exactly what she told me to order. And it is a lot of food. Like, I was like, oh my God, how do people eat this every day? But it's great. And then I went to Nando's in Perth, not the same, not even remotely the same. But I love it was and then I remember like tweeting, like Molly was tweeting at me, and then Nando's started tweeting at me, and then I was like, God damn, Nando's from the top rope. And then they made a meme about it. Like they posted a photo of me, like the Undertaker with like my face on it, and then like Molly like Shawn Michaels dropping an elbow on me. I was like, someone in the Nando's headquarters, their social media department, is spending time on this internet feud between me and a chicken shop. So it was fantastic. It was a lot of fun.
People are gonna, the people that are of the Nando's like tribe aren't gonna like this. It's just all right. It's just grilled chicken.
Get it.
It's all right.
It's Portuguese too.
It's solid. It's solid. Yeah. But like
the way I describe it is like it's never bad, but it's just it is consistent.
Yes.
So
and you're not going to go in and have a bad meal.
Like I'll put it this way, like growing up, another Rhode Island thing is like we would get the commercials my entire life in Rhode Island. We would get commercials for Sonic, Jack in the Box, Dairy Queen, In-N-Out, Chick-fil-A, Five Guys. We would get the commercials, but we didn't have them in Rhode Island. So to me, for 18 years, I saw how delicious Sonic looked.
Right.
And then I moved to Arizona. I was like, I need Sonic now. And then I went, I'm like, this is fine. This is fine.
Yeah.
But it still has that mystique. Like when I go to
Imagine having a border where you get all of the American fast food commercials and you're like, man, this stuff all sounds great. I got to try. White Castle was, it was fine.
Oh, White Castle sucks, dude.
In-N-Out was fine. We've got a Five Guys like 45 minutes away. Five Guys is solid to me. I'm in on Five Guys, but like, yeah, I get all that.
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A, same thing.
So it's
Calgary, Calgary Airport has a Chick-fil-A, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, I got to see what the hype is about.
Calgary has the biggest airport I've ever been in. It's so big.
Calgary has a pretty big airport.
It's so big.
It's true. Shout out to Danny Austin in Calgary. Although I don't think he's in Calgary right now.
Big ups, Danny. Haven't seen you in a bit. Miss ya.
I will let you get out of here, but before I do, tell people where to follow you, where to get all of your stuff, where to check out the episode that dropped yesterday, everything.
Mm-hmm. You can follow me at Jose Youngs on all social medias if you want. I will make you, but it's just at JOCYOUNGS on Twitter and Instagram. The Anything But Fighting podcast goes up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and MMA Fighting's YouTube page. And when you're done with all that, I highly recommend you go check out, because I plug this on every guest spot I do. I have no connection to this whatsoever. There's a charity called comicbooksforkids.com where people can donate their own comic books, and then comicbooksforkids.com or .org, I can't remember, donates all the comic books to various hospitals, children's hospitals in America and Canada, for kids struggling with, like, terminal cancer and everything, because they get to, escape the real world for a bit with a comic book. So go do that. They also take donations. I can't not plug Comic Books for Kids, because it is the charity that I am most passionate about.
Go do that. Go check out his show. Check out all of his stuff. This has been an absolute blast. For Jose, I am Spencer. This has been a conversation with. We'll see you next week.